Hello friends, it's Miss Anna from the Council Bluffs Public Library here with you today for another online story time from my home into yours, right? All right, so today I have a story and a nursery rhyme for you, and both of them are about bedtime. And our story is called The Squeaky Door, and it is a folk tale from a country called Puerto Rico. And in this story, I am going to need a little bit of help from you because the characters in our story sometimes get really scared. So I need you to think for a minute about what sound you might make if you were feeling really scared. So let's think. Do you know what sound I would make if I was feeling really scared? I would go like this. So you can make the noise that I just made, or you can do your very own scared noise at home. But let's practice. Let's do it all together. 1, 2, 3. Ah! All right, so when we're doing our story, when I tell you, you can join in and we will be scared with the character in our story. So once upon a time, there lived a little girl who was super excited for her very first sleepover at her grandparents' house. She packed up all the things she would need in a great big bag, and she set off to their house. Well, when she got there, her grandpa told her that she was a very lucky little girl because she was going to get to sleep in the big bed in the farmhouse guest room all by herself. She felt like such a big girl. Well, that night, when it came time to get ready for bed, the little girl did all the things she always does when she gets ready for bed. She went potty, she brushed her teeth, Grandma read her bedtime story, and Grandpa pulled up the blankets to tuck her in tight. And then they both kissed her on the cheek. They went to the door and turned out the light and closed the door. And do you know what happened then? Squeak! And the little girl, are you ready to get scared? She looks scared now, doesn't she? Can you be scared with her? Ah! That's what she did. And then Grandma said, "What? What is it?" And she said, "What was that noise?" Well, Grandpa said, "There's nothing at all to be scared of. But if you don't want to be alone, I have an idea, something that will help." And so Grandpa went on out to the farmyard and came back with, who did he come back with? He came back with the dog. And he put the dog into the bed with the little girl, and he tucked them in tight and gave them a kiss on the cheek and turned out the light and closed the door. And do you know what happened then? Squeak! And what did the little girl do? She went, "Ah!" And what do you think the dog did? The dog went, "Woo!" And Grandma said, "What? What is it?" And she said, "What was that noise?" And Grandpa said, "If you're scared, I don't want you to be alone. I will go out in the farmyard and find something to help." And so down the stairs he went. And a minute later, Grandpa came back with the barn cat. And he put the cat into the bed with the dog and the little girl. He tucked them in tight. He gave them a kiss. He turned off the light. And then the door went squeak. And the little girl said, "Ah!" And the dog said, "Woo!" And what did the cat say? Super loud. The cat said, "Meow!" And Grandma said, "What? What is it?" And the little girl said, "What was that noise?" And Grandpa said, "If you're still afraid, really there's nothing to be scared of, but if you're still afraid, I have an idea." And so he went down to the barnyard and came back a few minutes later. Who did he bring this time? He brought the cow. Is there room for the cow in that bed? Well, there's not room right now, but Grandpa asked the cat to move. He asked the dog to move. He put that cow up in the bed. And then the dog and the cat got back in too. He tucked them in tight. He kissed them goodnight. He turned out the light. And he closed the door. Squeak! And the little girl, what did she say? Ah! And the dog said, Roo! And the cat said, meow! And the cow said, moo! And Grandma said, what? What is it? And the little girl said, what was that noise? And Grandpa said, there's really nothing to be afraid of. But if you're still scared, I have just one last idea. And so Grandpa went down to the barnyard, and this time he came back with the mouse. Do you think the mouse can protect them all? Grandpa thought so. So he put that mouse up in the bed with the cat and the dog and the cow and the little girl, and he tucked them in tight and kissed them goodnight and turned out the light. And then the door went squeak, and they all went, ah, meow, moo, squeak, 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 and then boom, the bed came crashing down. Well, Grandma came in and she said, what is it? And the little girl said, the bed has broken into pieces. How will I sleep now? And Grandma said, I have an idea for something that will help. And so Grandma went down to the barnyard and into the tool shed, and she brought back a toolbox. And she moved all the animals out of the way. And Grandma used the toolbox to put that bed back together. And then at the bottom of the toolbox, Grandma found an oil can. And Grandma went over to that door with her can, and she went like this. Can you do that with me? And she put some oil on each hinge. She squirted that oil on there, and then she put the little girl back in bed. Should she put those animals back in bed too? Probably not, right? She just fixed the bed. So instead, she put the animals on the floor, down around the little girl. She kissed them goodnight. She turned out the light. She closed the door. And the little girl fell fast asleep. And that, my friends, is the story of the squeaky door. Turns out Grandma had a pretty good idea, right? Although Grandpa's idea was good too. Now nobody has to be alone when they sleep, right? So I have a nursery rhyme for you today too. And this nursery rhyme is called Wee Willie Winkle. Now, do you know what the word wee means? It means really small, right? So Wee Willie Winkle is a really small little guy, and Wee Willie Winkle goes running. So can you run with me? He goes running through town. He goes upstairs, so reach way up high to the sky. Then he goes downstairs. You can pat your legs or you can slap the floor, whichever you want. And he is wearing a nightgown. So we're just gonna take our hands down our shirts and be in a nightgown. And then he raps at the window, which is like knocking, so pretend to knock. And then he cries through the lock. And then he says, are the children in their beds? He asks. Now touch your pretend watch. It's almost 8 o'clock. All right, can we put that all together? We're gonna start with Wee Willie Winkle. Wee Willie Winkle runs through the town, upstairs and downstairs in his nightgown, rapping at the window, crying at the lock. Are the children in their beds? It's almost 8 o'clock. All right, my friends, that is all I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed the squeaky door and Wee Willie Winkle, and I will look forward to seeing you again next week for more stories. See you next time.